In an exchange rife with political tension and theatricality, Patriotic Alliance leader and Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, McKenzie, flatly refused calls from Julius Malema for him to testify before Parliament's ad hoc committee investigating corruption and political interference in the criminal justice system. McKenzie's response was blunt, dismissive, and laced with insult. "Malema can go to hell," he said, making clear that he would not appear simply because Malema demanded it. The controversy sprung from Malema's push to expand the list of witnesses called before the committee probing the explosive claims made by KwaZulu-Natal Police Commissioner Nhlanhla Mkhonotsi. Malema had proposed more than 20 names, including McKenzie, President Cyril Ramaphosa, and senior police and intelligence officials. He argued that anyone with information about syndicates or interference should testify publicly. In particular, Malema claimed that McKenzie had signaled a willingness to speak and possibly assist with insights into networks he believed to exist. Yet McKenzie vehemently disagreed. He said he would not go because he's the one saying I should go, refusing to be summoned by Malema's will. McKenzie insisted that the PA would instead submit a statement to Parliament via its spokesperson, but that he personally would not appear under Malema's prompting. The decision was not entirely surprising. In earlier remarks, McKenzie had asserted he did not listen to Julius Malema, making it clear he would not allow himself to be drawn into a spectacle orchestrated by his political rival. He framed Malema's request as political posturing. McKenzie also indicated that his presence could be co-opted by Malema's narrative, that Malema might claim credit for having had McKenzie appear. He refused to allow such appropriation, stating firmly that he would not be used in that way. His tone was dismissive, not defensive, as if to suggest that Malema's agenda was petty and that he would not dignify it with his personal involvement. Discussions about McKenzie's potential appearance had gathered momentum in the committee's last meeting, where Malema and other members of Parliament motivated adding names. The ad hoc committee, tasked with probing allegations made by Mkhonotsi about criminal syndicates and interference in policing, was preparing to hear its first testimonies. Mkhonotsi himself was scheduled to appear as the initial witness. Malema insisted McKenzie's name be added, saying McKenzie had samples of information relevant to the inquiry. But McKenzie pushed back hard. He said the PA's spokesperson would deliver any submission on its behalf, but he would not present in person just because Malema asked. He even told Malema to forget about using the PA or inserting himself, saying simply, "He can go to hell." The spectacle of the confrontation reflected deeper fault lines in South African politics. Malema's approach often relies on forcing accountability through public pressure, naming individuals, calling them before committees, and making political theater. McKenzie, by contrast, seems increasingly wary of being drawn into public spectacle under someone else's terms, even when he is minister and holds responsibility. His refusal to respond to Malema's invitation carries implications for how political rivalries play out in the formal institutions of oversight and accountability. The committee's goal is to investigate serious claims about criminal syndicates, political interference in investigations, and corruption tied to policing. Mkhonotzi's testimony is expected to implicate powerful actors, making the list of witnesses crucial. Who testifies, who is excluded, and how willing those individuals are to answer difficult questions will affect not only the credibility of the process but also public faith in its outcomes. McKenzie's name being on that list would give additional weight to the inquiry, or so Malema believed. But by rejecting the invitation, McKenzie also raised questions about whether the committee's reach would be limited by those unwilling to step into the fray. Malema, for his part, has not backed down. He continues to argue strongly for a broad scope, that every person with knowledge of syndicates, policing interference, or politically connected criminal activity must be summoned. He views the committee hearings as a chance to expose and dismantle complex networks that he often names in public speeches. His push is both legal and symbolic. He is using the levers of institutional oversight to challenge what he describes as entrenched corruption. By trying to force McKenzie's appearance, he aimed to bring greater legitimacy, or perhaps drama, to the hearings. But McKenzie's rebuff presents a challenge. What happens when summoned witnesses refuse, citing political motive or procedure? The public reaction was immediate. Some observers praised McKenzie's refusal as a stand against Malema's style of public coercion. They suggested that individuals should not be compelled to testify purely as a result of political spectacle. Others criticized McKenzie, arguing that as a minister, he has a responsibility to answer tough questions, especially when he is implicated by name in public debates about corruption and criminal networks. For many in civil society and legal circles, the refusal looked like another sign of elites avoiding accountability. Behind the sharp exchange lies a broader ethical question: how should oversight mechanisms handle political refusal? Should individuals be compelled by parliamentary committees regardless of their preference? What protections should exist to prevent fishing expeditions or politicized grandstanding? The McKenzie case may become a precedent if powerful actors can refuse to appear before oversight bodies by claiming motive or insult. It could weaken the ability of legislatures to hold them to account. McKenzie's strategy of refusing in person while offering a formal statement suggests a compromise between outright defiance and minimal compliance. He is not entirely shutting the door on engagement, he is rejecting being led by Malema's initiative. By delegating to his spokesperson, he retains control over how the PA participates, rather than being placed on a stage under the EFF leader's terms. This move may preserve his dignity in the public eye, but it also places more onus on the committee to evaluate whether submissions in writing, without cross-examination or direct questioning, are sufficient for such a high-stakes process. As the committee's hearings proceed, how the chair and parliamentary leadership respond to McKenzie's refusal will be closely watched. Will they enforce summons, hold him in contempt, or accept written submissions in lieu of testimony? Will the failure of scheduled witnesses to appear weaken the credibility of the inquiry? Will the committee adapt its procedures to handle political resistance from high-level actors? These procedural decisions, while technical, may determine whether the committee becomes a substantive mechanism for reform or just another stage for political posturing. In the days ahead, attention will focus on whether McKenzie follows through on his promise that his spokesperson will submit a statement, and on whether that statement addresses the allegations, the networks Malema claims he knows, and McKenzie's possible role in policing oversight. The content of that statement, and whether it can withstand scrutiny, may become more consequential than his physical presence in the committee. Meanwhile, Malema is likely to intensify pressure. He may reissue the call, threaten sanctions, mobilize the media and public opinion, or demand that parliamentary rules be enforced. He may frame McKenzie's refusal as an admission of guilt or as contempt of parliament. The stage is primed for escalation, and both parties seem prepared for rhetorical battle. What this moment reveals is how politics in South Africa increasingly plays out in institutional spaces, committees, hearings, commissions, and how pomp and defiance are tools within that space. McKenzie's rejection is not unique, but its sharpness, he can go to hell, underscores how high the stakes are when political accountability intersects with individual agency, rivalry, and symbolism. In the end, whether McKenzie appears or not, his refusal is a statement that he will not be summoned at the whim of a rival. Whether that statement strengthens or weakens public confidence in parliamentary oversight remains to be seen. The ad hoc committee's capacity to adapt, enforce its authority, and secure cooperation from those named will be a test not only of its leadership, but of how willing South Africa's elites are to engage the hard questions.